Welcome to McDougall. On this show, meet actress Kate Linder, who quit smoking the hard way. Hello, I'm Wayne Judd, and now the Tsar of Zucchini and the King of Carbohydrates, Dr. John. Hello, Doctor. King John.
Thank you very much, Wayne.
Well, King John, what do you have for us today?
Well, I wanted to talk to you about drinking in good health.
All right.
Did you ever hear that drinking alcohol, particularly wine, will reduce your risk of dying of heart disease?
Oh, yes, especially if it's red wine.
Red wine is particularly good. Now,
Which I strongly recommend, don't you?
Well, you know, that puts me in an interesting situation as a doctor.
Because the studies say that that's what you should recommend it, right?
The studies say that, and of course, you know, I run a clinic in the Napa Valley, which is the heart of wine country, and so there's a lot of economic pressure there for all doctors to recommend wine consumption. The problem with that is, as a responsible, I like to think of myself as a responsible health professional, the problem with that is even though there may be some truth to alcohol reducing your risk of heart disease, and we'll talk about that some more, but the overall impact is one of serious consequences. You recommend that people drink alcohol. As a doctor, then what happens is 9 out of the people can handle that message properly.
Right.
1 out of 10, that's a message to destruction.
Meaning what?
They're alcoholics.
1 out of 10 will be an alcoholic.
1 out of 10 can't take that message in the right vein, and as a result, it destroys their lives. It destroys people's lives through auto accidents, through spousal abuse, and so on. And so I think really it's irresponsible for a physician to recommend alcohol to people in the same sentence they talk about good health. But let's talk about alcohol and its effect on heart disease.
All right.
It's been found that people that consume alcohol have a reduced risk of dying of heart disease. And maybe one of the reasons, Wayne, is alcohol is a no cholesterol, very, very low fat food.
There it is. It's good food then.
So as a consequence, it doesn't bring some of the damaging substances in.
Right.
The other thing that red wine does is it is an antioxidant. And
that means?
Well, oxidation of biochemical substances, particularly cholesterol, makes them very reactive and very damaging to the artery walls. And so when you consume wine, what happens is that it prevents that oxidation and these highly reactive substances from forming.
I see.
Wine also thins the blood, and you've heard about taking aspirin to thin the blood and how that reduces.
Yes, I have.
Well, wine does it too, and so do other alcoholic beverages. They thin the blood, and as a consequence, the blood is less likely to clot. And it's the clotting of the blood that really finishes the artery off and really causes the heart attack. So in that way, wine reduces the risk of dying of heart disease. And this whole business about wine and heart disease came out in a 60 Minutes presentation several years ago, and it was the French paradox.
Yes.
You know, here they talk about how the French eat a very, very high-fat diet and at the same time have a very low risk of dying of heart disease. But, you know, that's been criticized a lot in the sense that the French that we're looking at today really ate a very low-fat diet several years before, and the French diet is only high in fat over the past few years.
So we're studying the wrong people, is what you're
We're really looking at a bias there. And so what's predicted by scientists is that the French who are eating that high-fat diet today, and it is a very high-fat diet, as they get older, what's going to happen is they're going to end up with very high rates of heart disease.
And the wine isn't even a factor.
Well, no, I think it is. I really think there is some truth. I really think that the wine does reduce the risk of dying of heart disease, but it increases your risk of accidents and liver disease. And if you look at studies of people, of populations of people, you'll see that. You'll see that very thing. Their risk of heart disease decreases, but their risk of dying of liver disease and auto accidents and other related accidents increases. Alcohol in some people also raises blood pressure.
Oh, really?
And that can be an adverse consequence when it comes to strokes. I'll tell you another thing it does, and a lot of folks don't realize this, is it raises triglycerides tremendously, and those are the fats in the blood. And those are supposed to be related to heart disease also. And so if you happen to be the kind of drinker that can limit your drinking to an occasional glass of wine and not an occasional glass of wine when you're driving and not have it interfere with your social life or your work life, you know, I think it's reasonable.
But you don't know that.
It's relaxing.
You're not sure of it. 1 out of 10
sociable,
isn't that way. Yeah.
But you just can't mix the two subjects up with good health. And a lot of doctors are doing that these days. And I think that's, they're trading in on what their profession is all about, which is looking at the good for the most of the people, and it just doesn't hold up. So
Good
now
point.
I hope I put it in the proper
Well,
perspective for
I
you.
accept what you've said.
Well, we're going to talk about another bad habit here in a minute. We're going to talk to Kate Linder about cigarette smoking. And I tell you, I'm an expert on that subject, and we'll be back in just a moment.
All right.
Thanks for watching Hello Channel. Learn the language of the internet, travel, commerce, and diplomacy. Watch Hello Channel and learn English. Do it for yourself.
And welcome back. With me we have Kate Linder. You may know her as Esther Valentine on The Young and Restless.
Right.
And Kate, you have quite a story to tell in terms of a real bad habit, and that's cigarette smoking.
Yeah, I admit it. I was
In
a
fact,
smoker.
you're a reformed smoker now.
Right. I haven't smoked in, let's see, 3 years, 4 months, 28 days, 10 hours, 20 minutes, 10 seconds.
Wow.
But you see,
And she's counting them.
that's what I mean.
Okay. What you said to me, now I'm just going to admit it right up front, is I've got 20-pack years behind me.
Do you?
Yes, I was an addict between age 16 and 26, and cigarettes controlled my life. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Everything I did was centered around those cigarettes. You know, where I went to eat, friends I associated with.
Absolutely.
Everything was governed by when I could have a cigarette, and people who haven't had the experience probably have a hard time relating. But here you count the hours and the minutes because it was such a big impact.
What I'm trying to say, it was absolutely the hardest thing I ever did, and I think that's what keeps me from smoking again. That's what keeps me from taking that one puff, because I know if I take that one puff, that's going to be it.
Isn't that
I'll
the
be
secret?
smoking again.
You know, there's one thing that I tell people who quit smoking is the only way to stay a reformed smoker or off cigarettes is to never take that next cigarette.
Right, because if you think, oh, I can just have one and your friends are smoking and it looks good and it smells good and I could just have one, but I know.
When airlines allowed cigarette smoking back just a few years back, and I did a lot of traveling, there'd be nights I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the same dream, and I'd be in a cold sweat. The same dream was somebody made me take that next cigarette, and I got hooked again.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'd been breathing the smoke all day, you know, those kind of feelings came back. It's one of the worst addictions known to humankind.
Well, I know that I was addicted. As a matter of fact, I keep 2 packs of cigarettes. They're not open. They're in a little baggie, Ziploc baggie, and they're in my freezer
You smell
right
them?
now.
Do you go in and
No,
kind of
I
whiff
don't
them?
even look at them.
No.
But I just, for some strange reason, I just have to know they're there.
You want
I don't
them
know.
there to resist. You
No,
know it is resisting?
I mean, people
It's like
think
the
I'm
heroin
crazy.
addict
You're
that
right.
keeps
It's just
the-
like their
the
cash.
fix in the-
You know, the
yeah.
heroin addict has their stash there, and for some reason, I guess it's because I figure if the whole world's going to come to an end, it doesn't matter anymore.
You're gonna run and
I'm
smoke that
heading for
cigarette.
that cigarette. I don't know.
Well, there are studies done on addiction that say it's more difficult to quit smoking than alcohol or heroin.
I believe it.
And a lot of people don't realize this, particularly people who are just deciding that they're going to start smoking. They don't realize what a terrible addiction it is and how hard it is to get that monkey off your back. They think they're dealing with something, a silly little habit, you know, that I can break at any old time. How could tobacco become such a part of my life?
Well, I agree with that, and I also think that sometimes people have to be easy on themselves too. If you're trying to quit and you don't succeed that one time, you can't beat yourself up for it.
How many times did you try?
I tried several times. I had so many different ways of doing this. Okay, here was the first way.
I want to hear it.
I had this deal where I wouldn't smoke till 7 o'clock at night.
Suffered all day long.
Right.
Hardly
So
wait
all
for that
day
cigarette.
I didn't smoke. And when 7 o'clock, I mean the clock was ticking. I had the
You lived
cigarette
for
out.
7 o'clock.
The lighter was in my hand, and I'm waiting till 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then of course I don't know how many I smoked. I probably smoked a whole pack between 7 and the time I went to bed because it was like, well, I have to get this all in because I have to last through the next day. So I tried that for a while. And that I was doing pretty well on that. Until then I said, I'll forget it, and I started smoking again. Then I had this little machine. It was like a computer. And what you would do is you would program it. And every time you smoked, you would press this little button, and you would do that for a couple weeks. And then it would detox you, is what it would do. It would tell you when you could smoke.
Sure.
And so when it first started, the first couple weeks, it would give you cigarettes all the time, even if you didn't want them. And you'd have to smoke. Every time it buzzed, that was it, you have to smoke. So I did that for a while. I got down to a certain point, and that was all the further I could do.
Because the body craves a certain amount of nicotine, and it's going to get it. It's just like when people switch from regular cigarettes to filtered cigarettes. What they end up doing is they end up smoking more cigarettes so that they can get that dose of nicotine in that the body needs. There's a level that the body wants. And people who try and cut down, you've done that, tried to cut down to quit smoking, these are miserable people. They're suffering the greatest torture ever.
And I was a miserable person.
I'm sure you were a miserable person.
And ask my friends how miserable I was.
So what finally worked, Kate?
Well, then I said, okay, this is it. You know, I have to quit. And it's getting harder and harder because there's more harder and harder to smoke. There's more places now that you can't smoke. You can't smoke on airplanes. You can't smoke in certain restaurants.
Sure.
You can't. And it was just getting to be too hard.
You are a social outcast.
Right.
A
And it used to be that it was cool to smoke, but now it's not cool.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where, and as a matter of fact, people didn't know I smoked. On the set, if I talk about it now, about quitting smoking, a lot of people look at me and go, what? You never smoked. But what they didn't know is I absolutely did. I was in my dressing room smoking when they didn't
smell
see.
it?
I was real careful about that. I'd wash my hands and spray perfume. And
You were a closet smoker.
I was a closet smoker at work and out in public. So I didn't want my fans to know I smoked because I was embarrassed, I guess.
But you said it was cool at one time.
Well, in the beginning, it was cool. When I started, like a long time ago. See, I learned to smoke in college. My parents said to me, "Great, we send you to college, and what do you learn? You learn how to smoke." So, but now it's not cool to smoke, and so I knew I had to quit. And I said, "This is it. It's just too difficult. Besides, your skin, it's bad for your skin. It's bad for everything." So I said, "That's it."
Burn holes in your clothes.
Oh, I did a lot of that.
That used to make me so mad. And I couldn't afford to buy new pants and new shirts, and I'd burn all these little holes in my clothes.
Yeah,
and,
I did a lot of that. So I said, that's it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try this lifestyle, this computer thing again.
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is it. So it got me down to that certain point, and then I couldn't get down any further. So I picked a day, and I'll never forget. It was December 1st, because the day before my brother was getting married. So I decided, I know I'm going to smoke that day. So I didn't pick that day, and I picked the next day. And I said, when I wake up in the morning, no more cigarettes. That's it.
And you did it.
That was it. That was the day. You picked the day.
And it wasn't
And that's the secret. And that's part of the secret that we're going to share with people. We're going to tell them how to beat that habit, right? Because we're experts, a couple of ex-smokers.
Yeah, I wish someone had told us, right?
And they tried many times. And we'll be right back.
I Learn English, you can also on Hello Channel.
And welcome back. With me is Kate Linder. You may know her as Esther Valentine from the Young and Restless. Kate, do you feel sorry for these people, the smokers?
Smokers, absolutely. Well, only because I know that they feel really bad, and they're trying really hard, and a lot of them have tried numerous times to quit. And what I want to say to all of you out there that are doing that is just, you have to keep trying. Don't give up, because one of those times you'll make it. You can't get down on yourself if you've quit to a certain point, because I know several people that they quit, and they quit for a couple years maybe, and then they went back to it. It's a really strong addiction.
They have to. I think the first thing that helped me was realizing I wasn't dealing with a silly little habit, that this was a very powerful addiction. And once I faced how powerful it was, then I was willing to mount the energy that it took. And what you say about quitting and starting again, what I did is I used to beat myself up about it. But then I realized that this was a learning process. Like, for example, one time I learned, and this was back 22 years ago, one time I learned that when I quit smoking, I couldn't date girls who smoked cigarettes because I started smoking again. And then another time I learned that I played a little trick on myself, as I'd quit for 11 days. This happened a couple times. If I get out to the 11th day, I'd say, hey, I got it beat. I can just have one cigarette. And then I learned you can't have that one cigarette. Let's take a phone call. Hello?
Hi. I was wondering, if I switch to one of the low tar or low nicotine cigarettes, would that be a good way to lower my intake of nicotine and be a healthy way to go?
I did that, and it didn't work. I smoked the lowest you could smoke, but it's still, I mean, you would know better than I, but it's
they've
still...
actually studied this, scientific studies, caller, and you find that all you do is you increase the number of cigarettes you smoke so that you still get that dose of nicotine in that you need. Forget it. There's only one way to quit, just the way you did it. You say, today I'm a smoker and tomorrow I'm not. And you put every bit of effort you have into it, and then you can do it.
And you have to be good to yourself while you're doing that. And, and your family and friends have to understand, because you might not be easy to live with and be around. I wasn't.
Does that answer your question, caller?
Yeah. Is there any place I could go to or somebody I could contact, get some help on quitting?
Did you go to any of the quit smoking programs?
You know, I didn't. But I know there are several programs, there are several ways to do this. A lot of people have found success with the patches, the nicotine patches.
That has been some
But there's controversy with that.
Yeah.
When I quit, those were just coming on the market, and I didn't get them.
You didn't get the advantage.
So,
you might have been one of those people who used the patch and smoked at the same time.
That's really dangerous. That's very dangerous.
You know, the best programs that I've heard about are the Seventh-day Adventists quit smoking programs that are all over the country. They have the greatest success rate. And there's even a live-in quit smoking program at St. Helena Hospital in the Napa Valley.
Oh, that would be good.
So lock you up for 7 days or 10 days and make you quit smoking.
Oh, I like that idea.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks a lot.
That's really the way to do it. Just
I think you have to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. You have to know what your trigger points are, such as smoking while you're talking on the phone, or driving, or a cup of coffee, or drinking, that first drink, if you have a glass of wine or something. There's so many of them.
And
when you're nervous.
There's always an excuse.
Sure.
Amazing excuse. You know, my mother, who still smokes cigarettes, tells me that she would quit, except she'd get so nervous that she'd get in a car accident and get killed.
Aww.
Isn't that sad?
Aw, your mom.
Yeah, I feel sorry for her. In fact, we used to pick on her. She has 3 doctors in the family, children that became doctors. And of course, you know, all of us feel the same way about it. And finally, we just gave up. We just have to love her as our mother, who happens to be addicted to tobacco, and nobody bothers me.
I think you have to love, everyone has to help each other with this. It's not an easy thing to do.
And Wayne, we have some questions from
John, we have a couple of questions in the audience. Let's let this gentleman ask his question.
Yes, my question is towards to Dr. John about secondhand smoking. I was wondering, is there any studies or proof that secondhand smoking can cause deaths or serious medical problems?
Yes, the studies are there. The studies are convincing the secondhand smoke is very damaging. The tobacco industry doesn't believe it, though. And I have to tell you, I've been on radio shows where representatives from the tobacco industry have appeared, not with me, but at similar times, and they make a statement that's very important, and that is there's no proof that cigarette smoking will cause lung cancer or damage your health. And it's that proof word. It has to do with whether you're willing to accept the data or not. Now, you and I, Kate, as non-smokers, have no trouble believing it's very damaging, but people who are involved with the tobacco industry and benefit financially from it, or people who are still smokers, you know, they take this attitude that really there's no proof and they need to have, you know, unbelievable evidence. In fact, even that wouldn't convince them.
Another question, John, over here.
Hi, this question's for Kate. I was wondering, when you're trying to fight through an addiction, you got to go through a physical state of withdrawal. I was just wondering how that was for you and how long did it last, that period?
It was awful. I don't want to stop
She's
so
still going through it.
I still am. Look at me. No, in the beginning, it was like I felt like I had the flu. I felt sick to my stomach. I had bad headaches, blurred vision. But it got easier, and as the days went by and the weeks went on, it was less and less. And so you will get through it. So you just have to remember that this will pass.
It's usually the first 24, 48 hours that you really have withdrawal, real addiction withdrawal.
Some people don't, though. But I happen to have really bad withdrawal. Some might not. I don't know.
Well, the important thing is that you have to realize you just don't take that next cigarette. And that's the thing that you've decided, and that's the thing that every cigarette smoker has to decide, is that, you know, I'm an addict. And if I took 1 cigarette today, I'd be up to 2 packs a day again by next week. And I realize that fact, and I've decided that that's not the way I want to live my life.
Absolutely. And I think you have to remember, I don't know how about you, but I still want a cigarette. So it's something you have to deal with every day. There are days that I still would like to have one.
Well, when I get downwind from a cigarette smoker, you know, I do have some memories that are somewhat fond, but then I really think about what it meant to me.
Right.
The shortness of breath, the coughing, the, you know, serious antisocial aspects of it, burning holes on my clothes and all things like that. I can weigh the issues and I know exactly what I want to do. I want to stay away from it just like you do, Kate Linder. And we'll be back in just a moment.
My name is Alan, and you're watching Hello Channel.
And welcome back. We're with Kate Linder, otherwise Esther Valentine, Young and the Restless. Wayne, how do you feel about a couple of addicts talking this way? I mean, can you relate to just how much these cigarettes meant to us?
I have to confess that when I was about 5 years old, I had an older boy offer me a cigarette, and I declined because my father had said it was bad. And he gave me a nickel, which was a substantial amount of money in 1946. And I felt so lucky that I decided never to smoke, and I never have smoked. And I feel almost guilty about that, dealing with these two very brave and noble people who have been so disciplined, and many, many others who have never given up, but who have hung in there and made it. And I'm proud to be associated with you. That's how I feel.
And what advice would you give people out there that still haven't been able to do it? Quit?
Just keep trying, don't give up, call a friend or a program or your doctor and just keep trying and eventually you'll get there.
Or how about don't start for the young people?
For the people that haven't started, absolutely.
Why go through this? Visualize yourself as a non-smoker if you are a smoker. You know, that was hard for me to do because I started when I was 16 years old. I had to really think far back. But I remembered how pleasant it was to not have my life run by cigarettes. And that pleasant thought of being free of tobacco kept me trying every day. And eventually I was able to give it up, and it was the best day of my life. No question about it. But thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, John.
And please join us next time.